Hello, I'm Gabriele Matino. I'm an art historian and a research fellow of Venice. My adventure with Venice started almost a year ago when I began working together with Patricia Fortini Brown on a book project on Vittore Carpaccio and more precisely on his painting Still in Venice. Today, I'm really proud to inform you that despite the coronavirus, we managed to finish up the manuscript we submitted to the editor so that hopefully by this autumn we will be able to have the actual book in our hands. While working on Carpaccio, while researching his work, I've come across to a number of really fascinating paintings. Among them, there is the Culling of Matthew, also known as the Vocation of Matthew, which is my favorite restoration project of St. Venice. Now, the painting was made by Carpaccio in 1502 for the Scuola Dalmata di Santi Giorgio and Trifone, which will be the Dalmatian lay confraternity of St. George at Trifone. A confraternity funded by women and men originally from Dalmatia, but actually living in Venice, who share a common devotion towards St. George, St. Tryphon, and even St. Jerome, all of them patron saint of a number of cities and towns in Dalmatia, and Jerome, patron saint of Dalmatia itself. The actual goal of this confraternity, among many other things, was to pray for the soul of the deceased brothers, but also, and even more importantly, to take care and feed the poorest member of the Scuola. Now, the relationship between St. Venice and the Scuola Dalmata is a really close one. Indeed, between 2001 and 2004, St. Venice financed the restoration of the facade of the building thanks to the support of the California chapter, which allows us today to observe and appreciate this marvelous facade as it was designed many centuries ago in 1551. But the connection is even stronger than that. Once you step inside the building, you find yourself surrounded by numbers of paintings by Carpaccio. This is the only site in Venice that still treasures a narrative cycle painted by Carpaccio and placed still in its original site, which of course makes this narrative cycle as the best candidate for a major restoration project financed by the estate of Charlotte Herman, by the Thompson Family Foundation and Jennifer Wade. On the walls, you can see canvases representing episodes from the life of the patron saints of the Scuola. I will just mention here the canvas on the left, representing St. George fighting the dragon, which is one of the most famous paintings by Carpaccio. On the other walls, you see episodes from the life of St. Jerome, Christ, and even St. Tryphon. The Culling of Matthew, the actual canvas, was removed from the wall last year in 2019 and then restored by Valentina Piovan, one of the most gifted restorers of St. Venice, who removed the old yellow varnish that covered the entire canvas and then retouched it really carefully so that today we can observe the painting as it was in the very moment that Carpaccio delivered it to the Scuola in 1502. Now, the subject of the Culling of Matthew is described in the Gospel of Matthew himself. He says how when Christ moved from Bethlehem to the village of Capernaum, nearby the Sea of Galilee, Christ worked a number of miracles, but also called many apostles to him. One day, Christ was walking around the city when he came across a tax collector. Jesus decided to approach him and he ordered, "Follow me." Of course, Matthew did not have any other option but just follow Jesus. Now, in depicting this event, Carpaccio decided to move from Galilee to a town in the Venetian mainland, in the so-called terraferma. So behind those walls, you can see buildings, even a church that might refer to a city such as Mestre or even Treviso. Even more remarkable is the fact that the office of the tax collector of Matthew is not something that was invented by Carpaccio, but it is a copy from the reality. What I'm referring here is the Sottoportico del Banco Giro. Now, what you see here is a view of Campo San Giacomo. You can see the Church of San Giacomo far in the background on the right. Beyond that, there would be the Rialto Bridge. But under this porch, under the Sottoportico, del Banco Giro, back in the 16th century, there were the benches, the so-called banchi of bankers, moneylenders, and money changers. So this is the place, and you should think about it, this is the place where Carpaccio went with his own sketchbook and copied a real example of a bank. Now, let's have a closer look to the office of Matthew. What you see above the counter are a couple of carpets which are not placed there for decoration, but actually refer to a precise banca. It was called the Banco de Tapeto, which means a bank of carpet, literally. And it referred to a money changer that held a public license. So he's representing here something really concrete, something real. Now, above the counter, you see piles of coins. You can recognize some golden ducats, but also some silver lire. Whereas the object on the foreground, this very object here, which looks like a tray, but in an odd funnel shape, was a tool really used by bankers. You can see how that was used in this drawing in a manuscript from the 15th century, where a banker is pouring money, is pouring coins out of a bag, putting on the tray, counting them, and then pouring again inside the bag by using really this funnel shape. Then the bags, once full, will be closed and then put in the safe, exactly as it is represented by Carpaccio here on the back of the counter. So Carpaccio decided to make the event real, to transform in a way, to turn a mythical or a miraculous event into something real that really happened in a concrete place, in a place that could be familiar and something so recognizable by the beholder, by the people who look at the painting back in the 16th century. But then Carpaccio worked even harder on choosing the actual moment within the story. To make this concept really clear, I want to relate for just a moment to another masterpiece. This is Caravaggio, representing exactly the same episode, the Culling of Matthew. As you can see here, Caravaggio uses light and darkness and shadow to focus your attention on the hand of Christ. Here, Christ is really calling Matthew, who, by the way, hasn't even noticed that Jesus is there. So the purpose of this painting is to represent the actual calling, the actual moment when Christ called Matthew. Carpaccio did something different. As you can see, Matthew has already left his office. He has crossed the threshold. He's actually holding the hand of Christ in order to follow him. He's moving toward Christ. Nonetheless, there is a really peculiar, really interesting detail. Look at Matthew's right hand. You see how his fingers are still lingering on the counter. They're actually touching the coins. So what Carpaccio depicted here is not the calling of Matthew, but is the moment when Matthew had to choose Christ, had to decide to leave his own interest behind him and follow Christ and follow the good of the faithful, or follow the good of those more in need. Now, behind this decision, behind the decision to select this specific iconographic moment should be the donor of the painting. Most of the scholars believe that the donor is the man portrayed here behind Matthew. Now, scholars have been arguing a lot about the identity of this man. According to some, this would be Sebastiano Michel, the prior of the church of San Giovanni al Tempio, a church which is still standing nearby the Scuola Dalmata, and back in the 16th century actually owned the building. However, according to some other scholars, this will be the portrait of Gregorio dalle Acque, so the Gastaldo of the Scuola, the head of the Confraternity, the one who in 1502, the very year when the painting was done, so the Gastaldo who received the donation of the precious relics of St. George given to the Scuola exactly in 1502. And this might be the reason why at the bottom of the painting you can see this coat of arms with a reliquary containing apparently the relics of St. George, placed just next to the cartellino, this piece of paper where Carpaccio signed and placed the date 1502. Now, what is certain is the purpose of the painting. The painting was made in order to taught a lesson to the brothers, to those brothers and sisters who have to get close to the painting and think about the content of the painting, think about the topic here, they had to observe the painting and learn how to renounce to their own interest and devote themselves to the good of the poor, to the good of the poorest brothers of the confraternity. In the next episode, we will focus on St. Augustine in the studio, a painting that is currently being restored by Valentina Piovan, and I would say is one of the most important paintings of the time. In the meanwhile, I ask you to visit our website. As you can see, there is still some sponsorship opportunity. So visit our website, help us to restore this marvelous and very, very interesting narrative cycle. Help us to save Carpaccio, help us to save Venice. Thank you.